Welcome to the world of Kooza by Cirque du Soleil. Dive into a mesmerizing journey with Kooza, the 20th creation by Cirque du Soleil, which has captivated nearly 8 million spectators since its debut in April 2007. Touring over 65 cities in 22 countries across 4 continents, Kooza follows the adventures of the Innocent, a charming and naive clown on a quest for self-discovery. Guided by a mysterious trickster, the Innocent is transported to an exotic and whimsical kingdom where strength meets fragility and laughter intertwines with chills. Prepare yourself for an adrenaline-packed spectacle filled with daring acrobatics and slapstick humor, echoing the nostalgic essence of traditional circuses. The name Kooza, derived from the Sanskrit word koza, meaning box or treasure, encapsulates the show's essence, a circus in a box, celebrating the physical prowess of human performance in a vibrant, humorous ensemble. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Duncan Cameron, an extraordinary performer and theatre maker from Ottawa, Canada. Currently residing in Liverpool, UK, Duncan's journey into the world of clowning and theatre began with his success in the Canadian Improv Games, which led him to study at the renowned École Philippe Gaulier in Paris. With a family history steeped in clowning, Duncan's older brother Jesse is also a professional clown. Duncan has performed globally and founded his own theater company. Now he brings his unique talents to Cirque du Soleil's Kooza, marking his first tour with the legendary circus. Besides his impressive clowning skills, Duncan is a multi-instrumentalist with a passion for Mexican wrestling. Welcome, Duncan. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny when I was reading your bio that you have a passion for Mexican wrestling. Where'd that come from?
Honestly, I think it's my tie to also theater as well. I think like it's just such a theatrical like sport in a way. You know, like everything's about good guys, bad guys. It's so theatrical. People are wearing masks. They have
Right.
interesting characters. I love it. I have about 24 Mexican wrestling masks on tour with me, and
That's amazing. That is so funny. So we actually have had the opportunity to see Kooza twice. We were invited to a media day, and we were really kind of dumbfounded that we would be invited because, you know, we're a Disney podcast. So, you know, it didn't really line up with what we do. But when you think about it, there's so much theater between the two. And I feel like there's such a tie between circus and entertainment and Disney. And so I was very thrilled to be there because I've actually seen, I think now 5 productions by Cirque du Soleil. My first was Mystère in Las Vegas at the Treasure Island. And I've seen that show about a dozen times now. And it is just one of the most amazing shows that I've ever seen. But after seeing Kooza twice, it actually topped the list. And
I think that the Kooza is a really special show in that regard because it has, I mean, what they say or how it was created was that it's an homage to traditional circus, right? So it's got a lot of like kind of more traditional values, a traditional way of performing circus mixed with Cirque du Soleil's sort of contemporary circus flair, right? So
Right.
Mystère was really created in a contemporary circus way, a lot more theatrical, a lot more aesthetic, and story driven in a way. But Kooza's got a little bit of everything. So I really enjoy being on this show. I think it's a really lovely show to be in.
Yeah.
And see the audience is it's just so exciting for them to be in the audience, you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you would be surrounded by that when you're sitting in the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even count the times when I'm sitting next to Tab, I'm squeezing her leg, or literally out loud saying "Wow!" Like I was just literally the word "amazed" came to mind because I was truly amazed at what was happening from the first. I mean, even from your skits up front to the ending bell, like everything was so just awe-inspiring. It's such an amazing show, and I'm so happy that you're here that we can talk about it. Let our audience know, like, hey, you got to go see this before August, and if you can't, make sure you see it when they come back to Santa Monica.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mom has seen the show so many times now, and every time she's like, I can't look at this thing. It's just it's too much. You know, it's like, you know this act, you know this, how it is. But yeah, she gets, it's quite a lot. It's a big show. It's a lot of energy. And yeah, it's one of those things that very few shows are able to carry you all the way through without you sort of, it's like one yawn, maybe two every so often. But this show, I feel like it's just got people like locked in the stage.
Oh, absolutely. It's just nonstop. I mean, even during the pre-show and just before you come back from intermission with you and the other 2 clowns keeping us going. And It's just, it's nonstop action from start to finish. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your past. And so I had mentioned in the intro that you studied at École Philippe Gaulier, and I think I'm saying that right.
I mean, if for me, you're saying it perfectly. If you were speaking to him, it would never be right.
So for those not in the clown world, this is probably the most prestigious clown school, and it's located in Paris, correct?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, he's a little bit outside of Paris, but I mean,
okay.
For East, we'll say it's in Paris. He's a legendary clown teacher. He's one of those few masters of the craft that are still going from this sort of resurgence of clowning back in the 80s. So I've been so lucky to be able to go and train with him in the past. And I've trained with a whole bunch of other clowns as well, but that was predominantly my main training. And he is the epitome of any sort of French clown teacher that you would ever think of from Hollywood. He wears the beret, the small round glasses, and he just tells you that you are terrible. Everything is terrible, and you can't do anything about that. So that was my training. I was just told I was terrible the whole time.
That's amazing.
So now I'm here trying to prove them wrong.
Was that your first experience with clowning, or did you have something training before that?
I mean, like, I've always been around the sort of circus clowning world, mostly because of my brother. My brother, as you mentioned earlier, like he's 12 years older than me.
Okay.
So when I was 7 and 8, he was already doing professional shows. He was making alternative clown shows. By the time I was graduating high school, he was already in Cirque du Soleil in Alegria, and he was touring around with them. So he'd already been to Gaulier. He'd already done. Basically, he kind of carved the whole path of my career. Did the improv game. And then went to Gaulier, and then did Cirque. So I've sort of done all of those stepping stones as well. And I had the opportunity to work with my brother recently. He was one of the other clowns in the previous city, actually. So it was really recent. I was performing with him on stage. Very cool.
How was that as an experience together?
It was amazing. Honestly, it was like one of those full circle sort of, my whole life, my whole career has been sort of like ramping up to this moment. And it's funny talking about Gaulier, my teacher. We both studied with him, and when Gaulier found out that he was my brother, he weaponized it against me, and he would tell me that you are not as funny as your brother.
Amazing.
It's not genetic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was nice to finally perform with him, and kind of put those weird things in the back of my head to rest.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a cool experience to be able to work with your brother, who was such an influence in the world of clowning. So what's he up to now?
He does a lot of his own sort of. He has his own sort of clowning that he does on the side as well. Like right now, he's back home supporting his family. That's the balance that a lot of artists have to do. They have to go back and sort of make money. Not that he wasn't doing that here, but a lot of artists have that sort of cycle of, okay, I'm going to move on. What's next? What's the next project? That's the thing. So a lot of us start thinking, okay, what's next for my career? What do I want to do? What do I want to create? We all love working for Cirque du Soleil, but every so often, like, okay, let's put on some new clown shows.
Right.
That's
so cool. So this is your first experience with performing with Cirque du Soleil. What were you doing before that?
So I have my own theater company back in England, and I create with it's kind of like a collective community of people that all went to Gaulier, and so it's sort of like a setup of a funny joke in a way. We've got an Italian, a Japanese, Canadian, a Spanish, and a Scouser, which is what you call people from Liverpool.
Okay.
So we all congregated in Liverpool, and we make very strange alternative clown shows there. So I've been doing a lot of that. I've worked on other because we all freelance. We come in and out. I do a lot of I dress up like parrots or zebras, and I'm dancing around in zoos. I do street theater. I do cabaret. I like to try to keep my experience as varied as possible.
Right.
And I think that it really helps for gigs like this when display, because it really requires a lot of different skill sets. So,
right. Yeah, there's a lot of you know, the jokes are one thing, but there's so much physical comedy that you're doing in the show. I mean, we Tabitha and I were talking about how there was a segment where there's like a lot of vocal sound effects, and it seemed like it was a lot coming from you. Like, what's that process like?
That's funny. It's like, you know, a lot of counting schools or counting training doesn't necessarily give, like, you know, train you to do sound effects necessarily.
Right.
So sometimes some people just do that for fun. You know, I always just did it for fun, and now it's actually like an inherent skill of something that I have to do as part of my job.
Right.
Is this cat sound funny, or is this cat sound funny? Like, what? You know, so it's like we're always trying to play around with the musicality of the act, and yeah, I think I'm deviating a little bit from your question, but yeah, it's been interesting sort of trying to fit all of those different kind of skills, because I do have mime training in my background.
Sure.
I do have a lot of clowning, a lot of audience participation, and, like, you know, being able to work with crowds and things like that.
Yeah.
And all of those things, if you're missing one of those sort of building blocks, and sort of you're constantly trying to learn it on the job. Quite a experience to try to do that.
That's got to be how your love of wrestling kind of like comes in, because you have to know how to work a crowd if you're a wrestler.
That is exactly it. I mean, for me, I mean, I'm going to speak. I don't want to offend any wrestling fans, but I would say, like, circus and wrestling, they're so similar. Like,
absolutely.
It's acrobatics, especially the Mexican wrestling, which is what I'm really into. Is they're so acrobatic. There's a lot of high flying. There's a lot of flippy flips and all sorts of cool stuff. And there's always a really simple storyline, which is usually good versus bad sort of thing. And it's similar to what we don't really have like evil characters in this show, but we do have a through line of sort of innocence prevailing, learning. So yeah, for me, circus and theater and wrestling, they're all hand to hand.
I agree. We're big wrestling fans, and I 100% agree. Yeah, we're watching WWE twice a week, and I've seen a lot of lucha libre matches. I wrestled in one match in my lifetime, which was actually quite fun.
That is so cool.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was a wrestler in a small indie circuit, and we actually went to a lucha libre event at a swap meet, and he's like, "You want to wrestle me?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So we did a 2-minute match. It was the hardest physical thing I've ever done in my life. I couldn't walk for a week after a 2-minute match. It was crazy.
I did a very strange gig once where I was hired by a circus company called the Invisible Circus. They're based out of Bristol in England. And they hired me, and we went to Luxembourg in Europe, and it was all basically a cage wrestling sort of thing, but I mean, we were supposed to wrestle, and I was dressed as a peacock, and I had to wrestle a gorilla, and then later I had to wrestle a seal. I mean, everybody is people dressed as in these costumes, so we were wrestling, and it was such a goofy, lovely experience in the hillside of Luxembourg. It was one of my favorite. It was not professional wrestling by any means. It was like hey gorilla, give me a choke slam, you know, and then I should have studied how to do that first. I was like,
That is amazing. So, before you were doing all this great stuff before, how has your Cirque du Soleil experience been? When did you start, and what's it been like up until this point?
So I've been on the show for nearly 2 years now, and it's been unbelievable. Honestly, it's been one of those like dream come true moments, you know, and I've been working for Cirque for such a long time. I think I first auditioned for them about 8 years ago when I first applied, got a database. It's been a long process, and finally getting here is like, it's just been so perfect. I've been watching a lot of the other shows, and I can't imagine doing any of the other shows, to be honest. I think that this job, this clown role, aligns so perfectly with what I do and how I am as a performer and everything. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is exactly where I want to be. And yeah, it's definitely one of the funnest jobs that I've had in terms of, applying what I do. It's been a challenge. It's a very physical challenge. Like I'm on the stage running back and forth constantly.
I was gonna say majority of the show.
Yeah, exactly. I think I counted it out. I think it's almost about half an hour of stage time where we're just on stage, high octane, probably shouting and screaming and running and
cat noises.
You don't
cat noises.
Cat noises. You know what? The cat noise is one of the hardest moments of the show for me.
I can imagine.
I'm doing this sound effect, and I'm trying to make it look like I'm not doing the sound effect. And I sometimes my head gets a little dizzy, and I'm trying to just make it look like it's super easy, but I can't breathe at that moment. It's such a funny moment to be like, how is this the hardest part of the whole show? Yeah. So yeah, it's been a really interesting and lovely experience for me, and working with some of the most talented people in my life. So I'm learning a lot. I think it's going to be hard to top this after this, to be honest.
Sure.
When I do decide to move on to the next project, it's going to be like, wow, like how is that going to feel? It's going to be very difficult.
Right. Speaking of, Cirque and the rigorous processes and, rehearsals and things like that, can you share maybe some behind the scenes life of a Cirque performer?
Yeah, well, I would say, like I'll talk about the high wire guys, for example. We have a high wire family. And I find that their work ethic is so inspiring to me. Everybody here is inspiring to me. Everybody's working at the top of their game. They all look like Greek statues, They're all cut. And, it's just so frustrating. But anyway, so I come to work and you see the high wire guys. They come in and they're a family. There's two brothers that they're the original cast members. The oldest guy, he's 63 years old.
No
and
way.
His brother is 57, I believe it is.
Whoa.
Anyway, and they've been doing the show for 17 years. And they come in, and I've never seen them ever with a bad word to say. They always come in with a beautiful energy, and they come in to work. Those guys do a good hour. We have a low wire train in backstage, so they're always running back and forth on the wire. And then they have a set time, go into the tent, and they do it up at height. And those guys are just there. They're playing music. They're dancing. They've got some, the Latin flair. They're dancing around. Anyway, but they make everything so super lovely. They're working really hard, and then they're done. They go. They eat. It's amazing. But those guys, they do that every 2 days. Every 2 days, they have to get on the wire, because if they don't train, they start to feel a bit of the danger. They're very high up there, right?
Yeah.
So, that they've just dedicated themselves to this lifestyle, which is I train every 2 days on top of the wire. And if they're not training on the wire, they're training other muscles, other things. They're constantly, when they're not training their body, they're training their mind. They always play chess, they're reading, or they're constantly trying to grow. So being around people like this, it constantly makes you feel like, okay, there's always something to work on.
Right.
And doing it with a beautiful energy as well. It's really inspiring in that sense. And I'm speaking just for the high wire act, but the handstand artists, the aerialists, they're all the same. I find like come in and everybody's there to work. So,
I would imagine it's like that for all of them, or similar at least, because you're talking about the high wire act, which is the most insane balance I've ever seen in my life. There's props that come into play. I'm not going to give away the show, but there's props that come into play. There's a bicycle at some point. Like it's crazy. And the amount of practice, and that's the first thing I thought when intermission came around. I was like, the amount of practice these guys must be doing every day or, whatever it must be just completely intense. And so when you add on top of that, that's just the one act. There's a guy who does a unicycle and he's holding somebody on top of his head. There's these aerialists that are flying 50 feet above the air. Like it's crazy to see like these acts and imagine like what their schedule and training must look like.
That's it. It is impressive. And the aerialist is holding on with just her hand. She doesn't even have a hook or anything. Just holding on her sheer might of her one hand. You're going, wow. How is it? I've tried to hold on to some of these, like the tissue act, for example. I've tried holding on to it myself just for 30 seconds. And your grip strength starts to shake and everything. Sure. It's like, So yeah, these people are superhuman, and it's
They
incredible
really
to be
are.
around. And
Yeah, the
and yeah,
first,
and that's the other thing is that they make it look so easy. Like
yeah,
they're sometimes you're looking at them and going, wow, where's the trick? It's like, well, the trick
right,
is that they're not. There's
exactly.
not. Yeah, anyway, it's incredible.
Yeah, and the first time we saw the show, we were in the second row, which everything is happening like right here, and seeing
I,
the
I had a neck ache by the time we were done. I was like, "Jeez."
Yeah,
but
yeah.
seeing like for instance the aerialist, and she's so high up in the air and spinning as fast as I can imagine, and then doing these crazy rolls in with no hands. It's just, I almost had a heart attack about 50 times during that show. And
Sean feared for her life.
yeah, I was scared. I was like, please don't fall. Please don't do this. But it was such an amazing thing to see. And like I said before, like, it's just an awe-inspiring thing. But getting back to you guys, you and your fellow clowns have a really cool pre-show before the show starts, and then also before intermission. But then you're also intertwined into the story as separate characters almost. But it's amazing to see how you engage the audience before the show, and it seems to kind of get ready for showtime, get people to see something going on stage, calm down a little bit, sit down in their seats. How much of this is like scripted versus improvised?
There's pockets with a lot of clown work. Generally, we have cues that we have to hit because we have sound and light. We have follow spots. They're all trying to keep up with us and things like that. So we are dictated a little bit about by the moments we have to hit. But then there's pockets of improv where we have freedom to go out and play. And I think that's inherently, it's so important to keep our performance alive, is that we're
Right.
performing with the audience. It's like I'm trying to come out and I have a few games that I want to play. I try to find some people. Some people don't want me to play with them, so it's fine. I just gotta find a way around them and
Right.
make sure that I'm not making people uncomfortable. So it is a conversation that we're trying to play, but we're also trying to wake people up and go.
Yeah.
Especially with a cell phone culture where everybody's here.
Yes.
It's trying to wake them up and go, oh, we're here. Like they are. Like I'm right in front of them.
Yeah.
So that's, especially in this show, that is really inherently what we're trying to do, is wake people up and really like go, you're in a communal space. We're here to play with you, and this show is for you, and you are here with these other people.
Right.
What I really like to do as well is I like to try just a little bit to try to make people talk to each other. If I'm just in passing and I can take somebody's bag and I hand it to somebody else, I'm not stealing it or anything. I'm just moving it so that now I have an interaction. Then somebody has to go, oh, sorry about that, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I'll steal somebody else's phone and I'll take a photo of somebody else. Or I'll take some photos, or I'll do something goofy with it and I hand it back. But now those people are maybe going to talk to each other and be like, oh, I can send this photo to you,
Yeah,
and then they start talking, and then they start sending each other messages, and I love trying to start games between audience members.
I love that. That is so cool. So there are a couple portions though where you have audience members on the stage. So I think my first question is, how do you, like, in the heat of everything that's going on? Because at one point it's just pure chaos during your pre-show, and I'm just like, where do we look and what do we see? Like, seeing everything is impossible because there's so much going on. How do you like pick the right person to come up on stage with you?
So it's funny that because we are intentionally, it's a very controlled chaos that we have, but the idea is that there's chaos, and we don't necessarily want it to feel like, oh, I'm just here to watch a show. It's like, what? Yeah, all of this stuff. But through all of that chaos, we are studying the audience, and we're studying our potential audience participants.
Victim.
So every time that I'm on the stage before our first act, I'm trying something. I'm testing somebody. I'm seeing if they're an open person, if they don't want to be played with. So we're testing the waters, and we're seeing who it could be. And so, I have my pre-show where I go and do that. We have 10 minutes to play with people and see how they react. Then I come out a little bit later and I have a big ball, and I see how people might react to a ball.
Right.
And then, but the whole time, all three of us are keeping an eye on the audience. And then by the time we're actually hitting our first act, where our volunteer might come up, we're usually quite ready. who we're going to pick, who we're going to play with. We want to make sure that we're not making people angry or super.
Sure.
I mean, obviously there's always going to be a little bit of discomfort if somebody's pulled up on the stage. Somebody might be like, oh, me? No, please no. Come on. So we like a little bit of that too, but it's interesting because we have this person yes, this person no, but we are really trying to find the perfect candidate for that day or that night.
Okay. So the second time,
unique experience for every audience.
Right. So the second time we went, you guys picked the perfect audience member for the sword fight scene. And I won't give anything away besides that, but you picked the perfect guy. On the other hand of that, what happens if you get somebody up there that just has no idea what you're trying to get them to do?
If it comes down to it and they're really, if you can see that the person's uncomfortable or they just, being on stage can be quite a lot. Mm-hmm. So if somebody looks very overwhelmed, we will playfully suggest that they'll just go back to their seat. We'll take them back. We'll grab somebody else. And it's not a big deal. It's absolutely fine. And we don't want to try to humiliate them or anything.
Sure.
But our act is about celebrating people. It's really not about humiliation. And so I want to make sure that people understand that. But yeah, there is a point where this isn't going to go anywhere. If the audience are feeling, if we feel that the audience is feeling like they're worried for the person in any way, then we'll find a way out of that and start again.
I love it. That's so cool. But we, like I said, you guys picked the perfect guy, and he had, mimicked you really well and just did like exactly what you wanted him to do. And it was such a great payoff for the whole audience. We were just ecstatic for this guy.
It's perfect. And I've never seen or even been a part of an act where we get such a great response from the audience at the end. Like the end of our act is really, it's electric, and it's so nice to be a part of that because getting an audience to, I'll say that the clowns, we sort of remove ourselves from the scene so that it's really just about the audience together, trying to cheer this person on, right? So it's a really lovely moment when everybody just starts helping each other out. Yeah. We're not saying anything; it's about them, and leaving it to the audience. I think that's a big part about what audiences want from live performance these days, that they want to see that it's live and they want to be a part of it somehow. And I think that's, again, what wrestling, circus, a lot of this interactive theater is about these days. Audiences want part of it.
And it shows because, like I said, we've seen it twice. So we've seen the same act 2 times, but it was 2 completely different acts, between the 2 audience members that you picked. So wonderfully done. So you actually play kind of 2 characters during the show. Can you talk about your roles and how they relate to the show and then how you relate to the characters?
Right. It's so the idea is that in the pre-show, before the show starts, I come out and my character is called the handyman. So I'm out there to fix stuff. So I'm there, I have a little toolbox, and I'm there to fix things or clean things or, so I'm there. That's my character is there. So that's the idea, is that we're real people in a real world, in a real circus. So that's the idea. We have the house manager, the person there who's running the stage, and then we have an annoying audience member who is the third clown. Noise. I have a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. So he's called the annoying tourist, and then we have the handyman. And then the idea is that once the show starts, we've been sort of changed into these new characters. We've been magicified. Mm-hmm. This new world, which is Kooza, and we become a king and his black servant, right? So and it's great. I think that it's very seldom that you see a really strong trio of clowns these days. Trios aren't super popular these days in terms of clowning, but even a lot of cartoons have moved away from it too now. There's a lot of duos.
Sure.
But anyway, I'm talking about, that's the thing. There used to be a lot more clown trios back in the day, if Stooges, like this. But it's a really clear hierarchy in terms of old school clown logic in a way. You have the king, and then you have maybe the in between. Which is me, I'm a bit more petulant. I'm kind of a little bit of a jerk and whatever. And then we have the top idiot. And the top idiot is and I say this in clown terms, top idiot is a term of endearment. It's a good thing, top idiot. So we have top idiot is usually the bottom of the rung. That he's the one that if we're gonna give a kick to anybody, he's gonna receive the kick.
Right.
So that's it, and we have that sort of clear status that goes down, I think. And yeah, so I play the in between. Is the secretly I think I want the crown. I want to be the king, but he's the play. So I get to beat up a little bit on my top idiot friend.
Right.
If I can't have true power, I'll take what I can get.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really cool because the chemistry between you guys is like palpable. And so it's really cool to see, like, you know, there's no moments of awkwardness. Like you're the three of you are so like in sync with each other. It's like, you can just see it. And it was really cool to see that. How much time are you guys spending together to maintain that kind of a relationship?
Honestly, too much. Way too much time. No, it's been interestingly enough, like, we've always had a really good connection between the three of us, and we've had a few different kings in the past. Like, we've had kind of a rotation of kings, but inherently, when we hire, we're aiming to try to make sure that the family unit is really strong, and that's really, really important for us as a trio of clowns. That us as humans, as our own personal family, has to work. So we always make sure that we get people that we enjoy to be around, we enjoy working with, that we're not gonna. I mean, there's gonna be every so often a little bit of like creative differences, but
sure,
we're not. You know, it's always good. It's always resolved very friendly and healthily. So but we do spend a lot of time together. Whenever we put on our makeup sometimes takes us between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and we are sat next to each other, and we're always talking and goofing around, playing, and so we do spend a lot of time together, and it's great because my counterpart, the other king's lackey, is a 50-year-old Spanish man, so
right.
So to have this sort of brotherly connection between him and me is quite a thing, and we have to work on that. We have to make sure that we're listening to each other, that we're here to play, that we're open and receiving each other. So it's great. It's really, I think that's one of the really strong parts about clowning, that you should be able to play with a lot of different people.
Right. So I have a question, just because I know from an experience of mine. I was actually a rodeo clown for a couple years. And I know that, it was really a lot of fun, but something that I took away from it was that, like, your makeup is very individual to you. How much creativity are you able to put into your own makeup?
So that's an interesting one for this show, for Cirque du Soleil in general. They've gone through this process where they've had designers, everything's been designed down to the smallest detail. And so by the time we get into it, our creative input in terms of how we look is we're supposed to take that on. So that's the image that we take on. And this is a part that is played by many different people over 7 So by the time I've gotten in here, it's a very specific way that they want me to put on my makeup. And I'll say that, like, I paint my eyebrows on, so small details like that. Like, okay, if my eyebrows go on with a slight curve, well, that's a little bit more of a characteristic that I get to take on for that day. But the eyebrows are basically in the same place. I'm not gonna go off the rails on that one.
Right.
Otherwise, I do have quality control that's looking down on me, going, "What's going on with your eyebrows today?" Oh man. Yeah, I thought my eyebrows would look great on my ear today. Come on, creative liberty.
So on the same kind of note, like, Kooza is like, it's got such a unique storyline, and the visual aesthetic is just so cool. How do the costumes and the set design enhance the storyline or the storytelling?
Well, I think the great thing about Cirque is, like, that this was again 17 years ago when the show was first created, and I was lucky enough to be able to see some of their original designs. I like to understand the shows that I'm going in, so I was able to see some of the original designs, and I've talked to the creator about it. They really, the amount of detail that they thought about how the set worked. What does it look like? What's it inspired by? They were talking about like flower petals, how the stage sort of opens up.
Yeah.
The whole thing like a flower. There's a structure, so that we have a structure on the stage that is inspired by old school German circus. Having the band on that live in that structure as well. That's also like inspired by a German traditional circus in Germany.
Yeah.
Like a really beautiful detail that I was told, and not a lot of people know this, is that even the stage is a circular stage, and if you look at it, it has this sort of blue texture, and it's sort of kind of like a white, kind of milky way to it, and it's because it's supposed to be the night sky from premiere night when Kooza first had its premiere in Montreal 7 years ago. So it's the night sky, and if you look, there's stars. It's technically constellations all over the floor, and it's one of those things that it's just a nice detail for the show to have in its back pocket. So they really thought about a lot of these things to have a lot of magical element, spirit behind the show, rather than just blasting it with sort of design elements.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there's
you can feel the passion behind it.
Yeah, and there's something so beautiful about the simplicity of it all. There's a reveal at one point where you just I was like, it was breathtaking. But at the same time, it was so simple. And I think that with this show, less is more for sure.
That's it, and I think it enhances the storytelling. I understand that with this show, what the nice thing is you can bring more or less story to it as you wish. You can watch it and it can be just a beautiful show, but if you want to look at it in terms of a story, you can add your own metaphorical significance to a lot of these acts and what they mean in terms of the story for the innocent. So it's interesting to hear everybody has a different take on what does this act mean? How does it relate back to the main character? And many people that come away with a completely different idea or a beautiful imagination of what that was. And and there's a lot of people that just said, I really like that act, and they didn't, and it wasn't like force feeding a story to anybody.
Right. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I really
and I think that was something that was so gorgeous about the show altogether is I got two not completely separate interpretations of the show with seeing it twice, but definitely saw some things the second time that I didn't even notice the first time where I could put some things together. So interpretation is a huge part of this show, which was actually really cool.
And that's that is the interesting part about it, that every show is going to have some sort of quality to it that people are going to take away, the way somebody lands a trick and there is a rotation as well. We have 2 rotation acts that come in cover for some of our main acts. We have Icarian games, which is when they're foot juggling each other.
Okay.
Doing like this. And we also have a Diablo act. So I'm not sure if you ended up seeing any of those, but we also have some of these that
I don't think we did.
It might change. It'll change something that you might have thought about in one show or the other.
Yeah, well, we did see a variation because the second time we saw it, there was a drum solo. The drummer came out on a moving stage, and I was like, oh, that wasn't in the first time. So yeah, it was just little things like that is really cool. So if you are seeing it for a second time, you might see something new. I love that. That's so cool.
That's it. And I think that, inherently, because there's so much going on in a large-scale circus show like Cirque du Soleil and Kooza, you're always going to find those details no matter what. You can come back so many times and just focus on one performer. Wow, that person.
Yeah.
And, because I find that a lot of times you watch the show the first time and there's so many things and you're doing this, you're looking around, and the second time, and then by the third and fourth time, you really can just go you know what? I just want to watch one person and just see how amazing that one, especially in the big group act. There's a few group acts and there's a solo act. But wow, I just want to look at this one person, follow them, and they'll blow your mind. Yeah.
Right.
You go, wow, I'm really happy. I just focus on that one first.
Absolutely. I did that the second time around. I wanted to, during the, what is it, the Rings of Death or Wheel of Death?
The Wheel of Death.
Wheel of Death. It's so hard to like focus on one of the two guys that are just risking their lives for our entertainment. You know, it's like, it's crazy.
That's the one act that had me holding my breath, like, majority of the time.
Yeah. That's a good one to remind yourself how to breathe. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. But speaking of breathtaking, one of the things that I always appreciate about a good Cirque show, any Cirque show, is the soundtrack and the live band and the singers that accompany the show. And Kooza's no different. The band is just so beautiful. And I think without the soundtrack of any Cirque show, it's different, you know. And so when you put these live performers there, it changes the whole concept, the whole aspect, the whole feel of the show. So what are some of the things that we might not realize about this aspect of the show with having a live band?
That's a great question, because the band are sometimes some of the most underrated performers in the whole show, and we have some amazing talent up there. And so the biggest thing I would say is that our band leader, who is running the whole band, all that stuff, he is also technically a stage manager, because it's not always the case for any other band, but in the circus it makes sense that he's one of the people that is cueing light or cueing things to happen on the stage, because he's counting in the music. So he'll actually count in a lighting cue or a curtain cue with a 3, 4, and boom, and then something happens. And so we have a technician or a stage manager who is doing a show call, who's telling everybody when to go, when to move, when to do all these things, and and then they're actually working hand in hand with our band, who is playing 5 instruments throughout the show, 5, 6, 7. I'm not even sure how many. He's doing all these things. He's running. There are bits of some of the music that are underscored already, so they're a track that the band are playing over top of. So he's doing those sort of things, and they have to go off of what is happening on the stage. So if something takes a bit longer, takes a bit shorter, he needs to adapt everything in real time and signal to the rest of the band when they're going to go into the next section. So this guy is running on, I don't know what kind of coffee he drinks, but this guy is so focused. He knows every single detail about every single act, and the music changes when this performer points their toes. But if that performer is not doing that trick today, and another person is, maybe they don't point their toes at the same time. So he's waiting to watch this person's toes to let everybody else know what they're going to do. But yeah, it's truly amazing. And sometimes they rotate. So our band is also making some of the sound effects for us as well. So they have keys and things that they have to play with us. They have percussion that are going off of us. The singers are absolutely amazing, beautiful. They have they're choreographing dances and movements that align with the rest of the show. So honestly, there's so much going on in the band. And I've heard tell of the musicians. They all think that the bass player is one of the most incredible people, because apparently he never played the same show twice. He's grooving in the back, he's doing something, but because he's accenting something that's going on the stage, a certain kind of jump. Yeah. Like that. So every time it's different. Every time it's unique. You can't even write out what he does, because he's just there following the action on the stage. Amazing.
That is so crazy. Yeah. It's the care like that Cirque puts into their shows that makes me a lifelong fan of anything they'll do. I mean, I walked into this show knowing I was going to walk out a fan, just because I know the history of Cirque and what they do and how the other shows have made me feel. And I have to say, like, I walked out and I bought a shirt. I was like, I'm a lifelong fan. I will tell everybody I know about this show. But a lot of that has to do with, like, you and the other clowns and the acts. So I guess my final question for you would be, what are some of your favorite acts, or can you tell us and everybody listening about some of the acts that we'll experience when we go and see Kooza?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I never know how to answer it exactly. But I would say that for me, they rotate. I never have like one act that I'm like faithfully loyal to that one act. I think
Sure.
it depends on how I'm feeling, because 2 years is still a short time for a Cirque performer, but it's long enough to have gone through different phases of how I've been feeling and whatever, and like, oh, you know what, this act is really inspiring me today, and then you know what, another act is really inspiring me today. Like I love the power that the Silk performer has had, the aerial Silk, which is now going to be a new act actually. So we have a new aerial hoop.
Oh.
But the strength and power of that one act is incredible, and it's exciting, and it's strong. And then the other times, you really feel a little bit more rock and roll. It's a bit like kind of your music taste. Sometimes you're like, I'm a little bit more into rock and roll, metal or something, and that's your wheel of death. You're gonna want a little bit more. Ba, ba, boom. Wow, look at this, yeah. And then something you might feel a little bit more tango-y, a little bit more da da da. That's your unicycle act, your high wire act. It's the regal and majestic, So you have all of these things that, you kind of, it's kind of like a music taste. It's sort of, for me, it rotates. And
what a brilliant way to put that, because you're so right. Yeah, you're so right. It's so tied to the music that it would be, am I into classical music today or heavy metal? That's a good point.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting to have been able to see that in myself. Like, why don't I have one favorite act? It's really hard to choose, follow on one, and that might be true for any audience members. They just might be into a certain style or a certain power or a certain kick that day, and they're like, you know what? Peterboard was it blew my mind.
Yeah.
On another day, if I had in this stuff, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. When we left the second time we had seen it, we took our daughter the second time. She's 15, so getting her to be interested in things is getting a little bit more difficult. But
things like this she loves, because she goes to performing arts high school. She's studying musical theater, so she was so into the musical aspect of it and all of the performances. She said the opening act made her like nearly tear up. I was like, wow.
And we joke that she has no soul because she just doesn't cry anymore. So it's like, for her to say that was like super impactful for us. But when we left that show, I didn't ask, hey, what was your favorite act? I asked her, what was the one that made you bite your nails the most, or what was the one that made you maybe tear up? So I asked her kind of her favorite in genres instead of what's your favorite act, which I would ask anybody that saw the show that way.
It's interesting. What do these acts fall into, and how do they resonate with each audience member individually? It is interesting. Even the contortion act can be impactful, or it can be inspiring, or it can be, it depends on your age and who you are as a person. Like I like being able to see some of the children in the audience. Like you can see who is inspiring who.
Right.
When our aerialist is out there, I because I'm spying on the audience, I can see some of, especially little girls, so inspired by her. The strength of this woman, so inspiring. You can see, they want to be up there, they want to do that, and that's really incredible. And then, so it's really nice to see, how different performers and different acts, different disciplines can inspire.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, if you're ready to be inspired and amazed, make sure you catch Kooza at the Old Laguna Hills Mall, with performances running on select dates through August 4th, or when they come back to Santa Monica from October 19th to December 1st. For showtimes, tickets, and deals, head over to cirquedusoleil.com/Kooza. Duncan, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some behind the scenes look at this amazing show that we've just fallen in love with. We really can't wait to see you again in Santa Monica.
I would love to see you all there. I'm so excited to bring it on. We love full houses because it just makes my job so much more fun as well.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
Knowing us, we might be in Laguna at least one more time.
We'll probably make it to Laguna one more time at least before you guys leave. So hopefully we can meet you in person next time. We're so excited to have you on our show, and thank you all for inspiring us and putting together such an amazing show. We'll hope to see you soon.
Hey, thanks so much, everybody. All right, well, we'll see you there.